Right now you're looking at the 1959 Spartan by Singer, and the Spartan was a machine that is just like the 99, except they didn't include any attachments or a bentwood case. It came with a plastic base, and it was sold primarily as like a machine that you would use to go off to college with. This is made in Great Britain, so it's a 192K. And I have just set it up. A couple of things have happened. I have to reduce to 3 machines, and I have to do it quickly, like within the next couple of weeks. So that's going to be my 9913, but as a hand crank, the 1591 as either an electric or a hand crank with the Bishop's Sewing Systems hand crank on it, and this Spartan also with a motor or the Bishop Sewing Systems hand crank on it. Now, I've been using the White Family Rotary for silence for the dog, and I'm not sure you can see the stitches, so I'll give you a close-up in a minute. What I've done over here is hand crank satin stitch, and I can get back over there to point out where exactly I'm talking about. Now this has, I'm using the Bishop Sewing Systems hand crank with the motor on and plugged in, so there's a little bit of drag from the motor belt. And let me just see if the presser foot is in the way, the presser bar, because if it is, I'm not going to see what I'm talking about. Let me take it off of here and show you instead. Okay, so one of the challenges with setting the machine up like this is whether or not I would be able to do motorized embroidery. But let me show you this first. Right here is hand crank satin stitch. Right here is motorized stitch, long and short, with moving the hoop back and forth. So with this, even though this isn't finished over here, this is hand crank satin stitch, where I have complete control over exactly where the stitches go. With the motor, some of these are long and some of these are short, depending on how easy it is to move the hoop. So that's the first difference between hand crank embroidery. And the second thing is, like I said, it goes faster. You have to plan on it going faster. Now the Spartan needle is set just a little bit lower than the white, so you do need a narrow hoop. Let's get back over to where I was. One thing I've noticed already, though, is that the Spartan gives me a lot less trouble with going through a thicker fabric. It picks up the bobbin thread right away. There isn't any issue with needing to drop the needle. So just ignore those threads. And this is one of the new, more or less inexpensive foot pedals, which has to break in a little bit, but recently on Vintage Singer's email list, they were talking about motor controllers, and there are all different kinds, I guess. So I'll put the link to that group, and you can join and then look up motor controllers and find out the details about different controllers. But from my aspect, what I want to do now, this was doing this much better a few minutes ago. Let me get these out of the way. And that's why I forgot to put the presser bar down. And these are the little things. So now the thread's wrapped around the needle. Switching from hand crank and experimental ways back to electric, you have to double check things. I did put that down. So you can see how fast it goes. I have to get it to a point slower than that. And this is still kind of giving me a fill stitch. So there's not really any problem with doing it this way. But it's not the very defined satin stitch of the hand crank. And now I'm starting to hit the back of the hoop. Of course, I have the machine threaded for darning, which is through the thread guide to the left of the tension knob. And that kind of popped out of the tension for a minute. So that's actually even with the tension, the thread not being in the tension thing. But you can see it fills in, it's fast. Relatively fast. With the Bishop hand crank on there, I can switch back to doing it by hand crank if I want without unplugging the motor. And this rose is on 3 layers of fabric, so not exactly a typical example. So there I am filling that side in with the hand crank. And then, if I want, let me get back up there. If I want, I can just switch back to the motor without changing anything on the machine and do a different type of stitch. It's really still an attempt at a fill stitch. It's not quite a satin stitch. It's going to look different. Of course, if you have a zigzag machine, you can just set it on a zigzag satin stitch and just be moving your fabric slowly as the needle makes the zigzag. But I have to start using this machine because there's a chance, I'm trying to finagle things, but I may have to leave this apartment within the next couple of weeks. And if I do have to do that, the most practical machine to have with me would be the Spartan. It's fairly easily replaced. It can be electric or hand crank. It weighs about 25 pounds. I could put it in a big tote bag. So I'm going to be working with this for a little while, and I want to take what I've been doing with the white and hand crank embroidery and use it on the Spartan, but also include the motor and being able to use the motor. Now I have no idea why I got that big loop. So you can see I'm still in the practicing stages, but these are the different options we have if we want to use embroidery by machine.